Hi everyone, I'm Jess and I'm here at EVPL McCullough with another series of our Foraging for Your Home program. This month we are making some wind chimes. These wind chimes, I don't know if you can tell, are made from real bamboo. I sourced the bamboo here locally in Evansville. A friend of mine actually has bamboo growing in her yard and she had some for the taking, so I took some and made us some bamboo wind chimes. So I'm just going to show you some basic steps to making these wind chimes. What's really great about them is they're very eclectic, bohemian style, just really fun to make, and I think they turned out really pretty. So all you need for this program is some bamboo, if you have any, and some glass beads, fishing line, and twine. What I did though to prepare for getting the wind chimes ready was I sawed all of my bamboo pieces that I needed. I cut them down to strips of bamboo ranging from 5 to 7 inches in length, just so I could have a good variety to pick from. So I cut those down, I sanded the dirt and the first layer off to make them nice and smooth. And then I also drilled tiny little holes, which are up here at the top of each piece. So we can string through the fishing line and go from there. But yeah, it was kind of labor intensive, a lot of drilling, cutting, and sanding, but it was really fun and I really liked the way it turned out. So I'm going to show you how to basically just assemble these once you've gotten them to the point that we have them now. So I'm going to zoom in and let you see as best as we can how to go ahead and do that. Okay, so first things first is you want to grab some fishing line. I cut a few different pieces into about, about a yard or so long. You want to be able to leave yourself plenty of slack because as you'll see once we tie some beads on and start to assemble the bamboo chimes, you want to have more slack so you can have more room to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab one piece of the bamboo, which we're going to use for one of our chimes, and then we're going to start with one piece of fishing line. So what you want to do is you want to take the fishing line at one end and you want to try and create like a big enough knot that it won't thread through the holes that we're going to be putting them in here. So what I did is I went ahead and I took my fishing line and I made a knot near the end of one of the pieces. After that, I made another knot. So now I've got 2 knots in the same spot. Fishing line's kind of problematic because it tends to loosen while you work with it, but it's also, once you get it tight, it should hold up pretty well for you. Then I'm going to go ahead, I've already tied 2 knots, I'm going to go ahead and tie one more knot. So I've got 3 knots on my one end here. So it's a little bit, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of difficult to see, but the knot is big enough so once we thread it through our hole on the wind chime, it won't slip through. So I've got the knotted end here, and you want to take the loose end over here, and you want to thread it through the inside of the wind chime. So we're going to go through the inside and get it through one of the holes, which remember I did drill 2 holes on these pieces. So once you get it through one of the holes, you're going to pull the whole end through. Then that knot that we just made is going to act as the anchor and we won't be able to pull it through anymore. So now we've done that once. What we want to do now is do it again, just down the opposite side through the other hole. So I'm going to grab another piece of fishing line, make a knot near the end of one of the ends, then make another knot, and then one more knot for good measure. So we've got a nice thick knot that we can use as our anchor. So you have the knotted end over here, and then you want to take the loose end and thread it through the inside again and through the wind chime. So I apologize, it's not the easiest thing to do. So that part could be frustrating. But once you get that loose end through the wind chime here, like I have here, you want to go ahead and pull it through again. And then that knot will act as an anchor. So now you've got 2 fishing lines strung through the inside of the chime. These 2 little edges, these are just our ends where the knot tied it. So what I did is I just kind of messed with them a little bit and tried to get them shoved down in the wind chime so they're not sticking out and you don't really have to notice it. You could also cut the edges if you want, but I'm just kind of shoving them down in there just because aesthetically I think it looks better. Once you get them in there, you can also just give them a little snip. There we go. So now we've got our 2 fishing line edges strung through. Now what you want to do is you just want to take each edge and tie those into a knot within itself. So you just, like tying a shoelace, just tie a knot. Well, that's not actually a knot yet, but we're going to double tie it and then it'll be a knot. So we're going to do that one more time. So a nice tight knot. And then you'll kind of see, I don't know if you can see it or not, it's just a simple knot on the top of your chime. I've learned that 3 knots has been a nice healthy number. I think it's a tight enough knot and it won't get loose on you. So I would recommend tying each knot that you tie at least 3 times. So now what we have here is a chime with 2 pieces of fishing twine threaded through and then secured at the top with a knot. Now what you can do is you can add some beads. And this is where you can kind of take your own creative liberty and add as many as you'd like. On the first one that I did, I added 5 beads on top of each chime, but you can add 10 beads, you can add 7 beads, you can add 20 beads, you can add as many as you really want. It's really just whatever your style is. So here I have a mixture of glass beads, metal beads, and wooden beads. And you just want to take your beads and you want to string both fishing line pieces through. That way, when we get to the end of our strand of beads, we have a way to tie off another knot. So that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to string some beads to the top. So I'm just going to grab a few. I think I'm going to do maybe, I'll make a little bit more this time. Maybe like, I don't know, 7 or 9. And I'm very eclectic, so I like things to kind of really not really match at all. That's fun for me. But you can go out and you can get all the same color beads if you want to have a nice uniform look. You can even add things like bolts and washers if you have some like random hardware sitting around. That's also fun. Any charms that you might have that you're not using, really just try and be thinking about ways to upcycle what you already have. So I've got about 5 on here now. I'm going to go with a few more. And I will be honest, I am not a fan of the fishing line. It's difficult to see, but once your project's finished, it'll have a really nice, seamless sort of style about it. So let's see, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got 9 beads on here. Let's just go ahead and make it a nice, even 10. So now you'll see I have strung 10 beads on top of my chime. So this is the part that's going to be hanging from your top bar of your chime. So that's all you want to do. You just want to tie your knots, get your fishing line ready for stringing beads, string your beads, and then you want to tie another knot to secure those beads in place. So basically what we did before, where we secured a knot down here, we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it up here. So you just want to take each piece of fishing line, one in each hand, and just tie it in a knot. One little knot. When I tie the first one, I try to keep it loose just because I don't want to force the beads to have too much tension. I don't want them to be super stiff. I want them to be able to kind of move around a little bit. So now I'm tying a second knot to kind of secure that first knot. And one more, because 3 is the lucky number for this project, I have learned. And you'll see we have plenty of slack that we're working with here, and that's going to be helpful when it comes to our later parts when we have to actually tie these onto the bar. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I just did with this for these other 2 chimes, and then I'll show you how to finish off the wind chimes. Okay, now I have assembled all of my chimes, and they are ready to be placed on their supporting bamboo stick. So what you want to do is you want to lay out your chimes the way you think you might want them on your bamboo, and then you just want to kind of work your way across. So I'm just going to pick for this one to be on one end. So what we're going to do, it might be helpful if you have a second set of hands who can hold the stick or the piece that you're tying your chimes onto, because this is the part where it gets a little bit frustrating. It's really hard to hold on to and tie fishing line at the same time, but we're going to give it a go. So I'm going to go ahead and decide to tie my one chime on this end here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again just tie a single knot. And it can be loose at first, because what we're going to do is hopefully tighten it up to where it will not move on the top here. So I've tied one knot, super loose, and now you got to tie another one and hope that you can tie it tight enough. If not, you will have to depend on volunteers to help you through the process. So I've got 2 knots there. I'm tying it as tight as I can. I'm going to go ahead and tie one more knot just because, like I said, 3 knots is better than 1. So now I've got it loosely tied here. So what I did, just to sort of clean up the way that it looks when it's finished, is I took one of the fishing line pieces and I just wrapped it around and around and around and around. And then I brought it back down to the bottom here. Then I took the other piece of fishing line, this one, and I wrapped it around and around and around and around and around. And I had them meet at the bottom. So if you can see, you can just see that there's just a wrapping of fishing line that's now just kind of secured and a little bit more substantial than just the single knot. So again, if you have any partners in crime for this, it would be helpful if they were able to hold your base. So you're just going to, again, try and tie another set of knots as tight as you can near the base of where your beads meet your top piece of bamboo. So I've got 2 knots here, and I've got 3 knots here. All right, so now what you've got is this pretty secure piece of fishing line that's tied your one chime to your top structure here. So what I'm gonna do so I can get this slack out of my way is I'm just gonna trim the excess ends to about 1/4 of an inch past the knot. That way, let's be honest, this is gonna be hanging up, hopefully from a distance. You're not gonna really be able to see that little bit of fishing line. So there's an example of one. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other two. Now we've got two. You can kind of hear, it's wonderful, that bamboo clanking. It'll be better once we have more on there. And what's good about this is, you know, say you get all your chimes on the piece here and you don't think it's making enough noise, just go ahead and string up some beads, let that kind of dangle in just to add to the option for making it louder, or I guess less loud. If you don't want it to make a lot of noise, you can always remove items. You can also go out and find maybe some cool sticks and tie those up as well. Maybe some cool old utensils might be fun too. I mean, just be creative with it. Again, like I said, I'm really eclectic. I like things to be kind of like, not messy, but interesting. So I'm probably gonna add some stuff to mine once I live with it for a little while. Alright, our last piece is finally on. So I'm gonna trim that up. So now you've got all three of your chimes on. Isn't it wonderful? You can kind of hear once the wind really gets going, and if you add more stuff in there, you'll be as loud as you want or don't want. So now all we have to do is add an option for hanging the wind chime. So you can use anything you want. I decided to go ahead and use twine just because I think it looks nice and it's pretty durable. You can use fishing line again if you want to just keep with that theme. Really anything you want, but all we need to do to finalize this project is take a piece of twine, and you want to cut it as long as you want your hanger to be. So I've just cut mine a few feet long because I don't want the hanger to be too long. I want it to be a little bit shorter. So now all you do is you just go on one end of your wind chime here, and you just double knot. Tie a couple knots, make sure you get that twine or whatever ribbon or fishing line you're using, and just make sure it's nice and tight. So now we've got one, and then you just go ahead and you do the same thing on the other side. And I am not an expert of knot tying. So if you have better ways to do this, or tie knots or secure these onto this apparatus, you go for it. This was just the easiest way for me to wrap my head around getting these pieces where I needed them to be. Okay, so we've got our hanger, and now we have our wind chime, and it is glorious. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope you had fun.